Hi everyone, I'm Eva Langston. I'm going to try to remember to look at the camera and not at myself. We'll see how that goes. Thanks so much for joining me for my talk on beta readers and how to get feedback and use feedback. I have so much to tell you, and I also will try not to look at my notes too much. We'll see how that goes. Let me first just tell you a little bit about myself. I have been writing for a bajillion years, approximately. I got my MFA a long time ago from the University of New Orleans, and that taught me how to write short stories. And then I spent many years figuring out how to write novels. It's a very long story, so I will just hop to where I am now, which is I am represented by Allie Lake of O'Connor Literary, and we're currently on submission with 2 of my YA novels. Although that's what's happening right now as I record this. Maybe we'll have some news by the time this conference is live. So fingers crossed. It is a really tough business, as I'm sure many of you know. And simply finishing a novel is something to be proud of, much less getting it out there in the public eye. So a little bit more about me. I also have a Substack newsletter for writers. It's got tons of writing resources, query information, writing contests, retreats, conferences, opportunities for finding beta readers, all sorts of things. It's free, so be sure to sign up for that and stay in the know of all things writing related. So now let's talk about beta readers, what they are, and feedback, and how to get it and how to use it. So first, let's talk about who you should and should not get feedback from. You probably don't want to get feedback from family members or friends, because unless all you're looking for is like a pat on the back, because they're really, especially non-writer family and friends, they're really not going to give you the kind of critical feedback that you need. They might not be able to be honest with you, or they might not be able to really, say what they think is wrong. They might say, oh, I just didn't like that part. Whereas a writer might be able to say, the pace was really dragging here. So you want to look for people who are other writers, or at the very least, very savvy readers, people who read a lot and read critically, maybe someone with an English degree or a degree in writing. And you want to get feedback from someone who's familiar in your genre. If you're writing YA, and you get somebody to read your novel who doesn't read YA or isn't, familiar with YA, or, you're writing fantasy and you get somebody to read it who's not familiar and doesn't read much fantasy, then that's not going to be as helpful. And there can be a real benefit in having a stranger be your beta reader or give you feedback, because they don't know you. They're not going to feel the need to maintain a, relationship with you like friends or family might. And so they might be able to be honest where other people can't. So I'll talk more about where you can find beta readers and critique partners in a minute, but let's talk about when should you even be getting feedback, and what kind of feedback are you looking for? And I really think you want to avoid getting feedback too early in the drafting stage of your novel. If you are just starting out, you've got this little baby seedling of an idea, and you're just starting to figure out even what the story is and explore, and maybe you're writing scenes that are never going to make it into the final draft of the novel. I don't know if that's the best time to be getting feedback, because then, especially if you're getting critical feedback, it might kind of squash that seedling, So I feel like if you do get feedback early in the process, and some people need that kind of as a motivation, just ask for more positive feedback that kind of encourages discovery. So you can even say, I'm not looking for anything too critical right now, but as you read, kind of tell me, what were you hoping to get from the story, or what are you expecting to happen, or what parts do you like best, so that they're not squashing your drive, and so that you're not spending all of your time revising what you've already written. When you're still in the drafting stage, you want to be looking for that forward momentum to get the draft done. And if you get too much feedback early on, then you run the risk of spending all your time just revising those early chapters instead of actually finishing the novel. So what I've started doing is I will often try to avoid getting feedback until I have a full manuscript or close to a full manuscript. And sometimes I cheat and I don't do that. And so sometimes if I do get feedback early on, I say to my critique partner or my writing group or whatever, I'm really just kind of doing this for the motivation of showing it to someone, and I'm more looking for positive feedback and not as constructive right now. Maybe at that early stage, what you might actually be looking for is an accountability buddy or, just some simple encouragement. So, you might consider, saying, okay, I'm going to swap chapters with you, but we don't have to give each other feedback right now, or we can just say what we like about it right now because you're just in that drafting stage. You don't want anything to really slow you down or discourage you, if that makes sense. And I actually offer accountability coaching if that's something you're interested in. It's when you're just trying to get to the end, you may not want critical feedback. You may want somebody to help you, break up the novel into chunks and set deadlines and, check in on you and not necessarily give you feedback on the stuff you've written, but just make sure that you have written it. So that's something to keep in mind of think well, am I really looking for a critique partner right now? Or am I maybe looking for an accountability buddy or accountability coach? Now, when you have finished the manuscript, okay, now you're ready for some critical feedback, because I think sometimes people don't realize, you finish the draft of a novel, you're so excited, and chances are that novel is going to need perhaps multiple major revisions. We're talking big picture, deconstructing everything, getting rid of scenes, getting rid of characters, getting rid of entire plot lines, building stuff back up. It's going to need some, most likely, everybody's process is different, but most likely that first draft is going to be a hot mess and it's going to need a lot of major revision. So first of all, you may not want to even get feedback right away. You may just want to take a step back and just let it sit for a little while and then get some feedback on it. And so when you are getting feedback on that first messy draft, you are not looking for line edits. We're not at that level yet. That your critique partner does not need to go through and line edit. No, you are asking for broad picture, the whole scope of the story, the character motivation, and does this plot make sense, and how's the pacing, and is the climax truly, packing the punch that you want it to. You're looking for that big picture feedback. If it's a mystery, are you giving enough clues? Are you giving too many clues? Was it too obvious, the answer, In later stages of revision, you can get feedback again, and at that point, you might ask for more particulars, I've really worked on the pacing. Can you tell me if the pacing is working? Is it moving too fast or too slow? At that point, you can ask for more line edits. But that first revision, that first, getting feedback on that first draft, you're really looking for more big picture stuff. And so, different critique partners are going to do things differently. Some critique partners might just say, this part wasn't working for me, or my attention wandered in this part, whereas other critique partners might give you suggestions of how to fix problems, or say, oh, I was thinking, wouldn't it be cool if you did this, XYZ. And that's sort of something you can figure out if you like it or not, and then seek out critique partners who do or don't do that. It can sometimes be nice too to brainstorm with your critique partner, and your critique partner says this part isn't working, and then you could be like, well, what if we did this, or ooh, what if we did this, and bounce some ideas off of each other to try to figure out how to fix that part that isn't working. It can be really hard to get feedback, to get constructive, critical feedback on your work. This is something that's coming from your heart and your brain and you. And it can be very hard to hear, negative things about it, even when people are trying to be helpful. So, just kind of preparing yourself before you get that feedback that, this is going to help make it better. And some of these things might be hard to hear, but, you know, your critique partner or your beta reader is doing this with the best of intentions to make your manuscript better. And, you know, the best thing you can do is just absorb it all and, you know, try not to get upset and let it kind of sink in, and try not to be defensive. And I know that can be really hard. So, you know, it depends. If you're getting written feedback, it can, you know, you can just walk away and come back if you get a little overwhelmed. If it's in person, it can be a little hard, but, you know, just kind of sit and try to absorb the feedback without saying, well, what I was trying to do is, or, well, what you don't understand, you know, that's just because you can't do that when a person is reading your book, when it's out in the world. What you can do, though, is once everyone's done giving you their feedback, you can ask clarifying questions like, well, you said, you know, that you didn't understand this character's motivation. Can you tell me more about that? Or why didn't you understand? Or, you know, you can ask clarifying questions. And sometimes it can be helpful in a non-defensive way to say, you know, well, here's what I was trying to do. How could I make that more clear? Or how could I, you know, bring that out more? Or, you know, you might need to explain some things from a cultural context. You know, if you're writing a story set in a different culture than that your partners are familiar with, then that might be why they got confused. So, you know, you might say, well, actually in this, you know, culture or this time period or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But again, like, say, you know, once they understand the context, they might have some suggestions of how you could improve that. Sometimes, like I said, it can be helpful to walk away and come back and to remember that you can't please everyone. You know, sometimes it can be very frustrating because you will get like two completely different suggestions or two completely different sets of feedback. You know, one person loves this part and the other person hates it, and you're like, bah! So I think the best thing to do is to see what really resonates with you. So the feedback, because you can't incorporate everyone's feedback, it's impossible. You know, you'll end up with, I don't know, some sort of like a Frankenstein, is that what it's called? When you just like add everything, every suggestion from every person. You can't do that. At the end of the day, it's your story. And so, you know, some suggestions and some feedback, you're going to know deep down, you're going to be like, yeah, she's right. That's not working. Or like, yeah, I really love that part, but I think I know deep down that it has to go. You're going to know. It's going to be the thing that like you kind of knew, but you didn't want to admit. And then you have to hear it from someone else to be like, okay, they're right. I got to change that. And then other things you're just going to be like, no, I'm keeping it, you know? And I have this with my agent where one of the reasons why I love her as an agent is like 95% of the time, her suggestions, because she's an editorial agent and she usually doesn't read my first draft. I usually give my first draft to like a beta reader or some of my writing group, and I make changes and I like make it as good as I can get it, and then I send it to her. And then she will give me, with my first novel, she gave me an 18-page editorial letter, which was very overwhelming. But like 95% of the stuff she said, I was like, oh my gosh, she's so right. That's going to make it so much better. Or, oh, yes, I kind of knew that wasn't working, but I didn't want to admit it. And she's so right. And then the other 5%, I'd be like, sorry, she just doesn't get what I was trying to do. I feel very confident that I want to keep this. And sometimes I'll explain it to her and I'll be like, I know you said this, but I think it should be this way because, and then she's like, all right, go for it. So, you know, part of it is like, you need the feedback sometimes because sometimes you need to hear what you already deep down knew, you know? And sometimes you really have no idea. You're like, I know this part isn't working, but I really have no idea how to fix it. And then your critique partners can help brainstorm to help you figure out how to fix it, which is great. It can be very overwhelming, you know, especially if you maybe get feedback from a whole writing group and you come back with a stack of like all these people's suggestions, or if you get an 18-page editorial letter from your agent, that can be overwhelming too. So, you know, the best thing to do is, again, just kind of like let it sit for a little while. And then when you've got the energy and the gumption, you go through and make a list of all of the big picture changes you have to make. And you may even want to break it down to like, what are the big picture changes I need to make in Act 1, in Act 2, Act 3, Act 4, or Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, only 3 acts normally. What are the, big changes I need to make in each section? What are some of the like overall changes I need to make? And then you can make a list of like those little smaller changes that maybe you can work on the big picture changes first, and then do another round where you go back through and do the smaller changes. And, just take care of them one at a time. Don't try to do it all at once. And just be, knowing that this is going to make your manuscript better. So that is how to receive feedback and what do you do with this feedback. But we haven't talked about where you're going to find these people yet, of where you're going to find alpha readers and beta readers and sensitivity readers and critique partners, and what is the difference between all of those. So let's talk about the difference first. So alpha readers are the first people to see your draft and give you feedback. So this is usually like a writing group or a trusted, writing friend. It could be your agent if that's the, what you have going with your agent. And they understand that this is a very early draft. So they're offering feedback and suggestions and encouragement to kind of help you shape that draft. They are giving you constructive criticism, but they also are, being understanding that like this is still in an early form. So then beta readers are the second people to read. I usually try to give beta readers my manuscript when I'm like, okay, this is pretty solid. I know it's got problems that I can't see right now, but it's pretty solid. And then of course they find all sorts of issues with it, and then we do another big revision. But beta readers, they could be someone that you know well, again, your writing group, trusted writer friend, or it could be somebody that you find, in the various ways I'm going to tell you how to find someone. And generally they read the whole manuscript at one time, and they give you big picture feedback so that you can understand, is the story working as a whole? You can pay for beta reader feedback. I do this for select genres. I'll do this for some genres of YA. I'll do this for sometimes for thrillers and mysteries, some adult contemporary. The Good Story Company, also you can pay for beta readers. So I mean, it's nice if you are like, I really want to make sure I get some really good feedback and I'm not sure where else to find it. It can be helpful to pay for it. Sensitivity readers give feedback on sensitive topics like race or mental health, and they can read the whole manuscript, or they can just read the parts that deal with that sensitive topic. And again, you can pay for this or not. For my first novel, I had a character with a mental illness, and that I personally did not have experience with. So I think it was on Twitter. This was a couple years ago. I'm not using Twitter so much anymore, but I just put out a call on Twitter and I said, I'm looking for people with experience with, and I said the mental illness that I needed to be a sensitivity reader for me. And I found someone who was awesome, and they gave me such good advice and also confidence, because they were like, oh, you're really portraying it really well here. Here's something you could change. Here's an idea if you want to use it. And then I felt really much more confident too about, putting my work out into the world, knowing that I had gotten the sensitivity reader. So that can be very helpful. Okay, so where do you find these people, right? We need them. We want them. Where are they? So I highly recommend taking a class or a workshop at a local writing center. So I know here in the DC area, we have the Writers Center in Bethesda. I used to live in Seattle and they have the Hugo House. I used to live in Minneapolis and they have the Loft. Most major cities are going to have a writing center where you could go take a class or go to a conference. The nice thing about taking a workshop class is that, you're in class with these other people and you're workshopping and you're giving constructive criticism and feedback. And so then you can see, oh, who here is giving really good feedback? And that's actually how I found one of my trusted beta readers. Is I was actually teaching a workshop class, and I had this one student who was always giving like the best, most insightful feedback. And so after the class was over, I emailed her and I was like, would you like to read one of my manuscripts and give me feedback? And of course I reciprocated and read her whole manuscript and gave her feedback, but then she's become a really great resource for me. So writing centers, conferences, and writing festivals. I know Write On Con, the online Kidlit conference, has a forum to find beta readers. I also know there's something called the Great Beta Reader Matchup from Bianca Marias. I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name. And I don't know how often that happens during the year, but again, it's a, matchmaking for finding beta readers. And I'm going to be telling you a lot of things. I'll make sure we put links to this somewhere so it's easy to find. I mentioned Twitter. Twitter is a way. There is still some writing groups on Twitter or X or whatever. But you could also try Instagram. So actually, I'm in a writing, like a writers group on Instagram, and one of the women on there she just posted on her Instagram, I am writing a mystery and I'm looking for a beta reader. And so I responded, and we may end up becoming beta readers or critique partners for each other. So, kind of following other writers on Instagram can be a way. There are a ton of writing groups on Facebook. So if you go on Facebook and look under groups, you can search for different genres, and, you could probably find picture book writers and YA writers and middle grade writers and thriller writers, and join those groups. And then you can post in that group that you're looking for beta readers or critique partners. If you are writing for kids, picture book through YA, you can join a CBWI, and then they will match you with critique partners. They have a system to match you with writing groups or critique partners or beta readers. And then there's other genre organizations. There's like a thriller writers organization, mystery writers, romance writers, women's fiction, all of those genre, writing organizations and associations have similar things where they will, help match you up with critique partners. My Substack newsletter that I mentioned, I always include resources. If I find out, like this great beta reader matchup, the next time it's happening, I'll be sure to link to that in my newsletter. So, the nice thing is you can totally do this online. Like, you can have a beta reader or a critique partner who you do not have to meet in real life. You exchange stuff through email and give each other feedback, either written feedback or, hop on a Zoom call. I always think it's nice to do both, give written feedback, but then also talk about it in person, because your critique partner may have questions, or, you guys might want to brainstorm together, all of those things that we talked about. The Cheshire Novel Prize hosts a free group on their private app called Writer Space, where you can talk about writing, ask for beta readers, and connect with other writers. I'm just going to give you a couple of other places. Kidlit 411 is a website where I think they have opportunities for finding critique partners. Absolute Right Forum, Camp NaNoWriMo, so NaNoWriMo, their website, you can find critique partners. BookFox has a list of places to find beta readers, and again, you can pay for a beta reader as well. If you are, going out on the internet and going to, one of these places I suggested to try to find a beta reader or critique partner, one thing I highly, highly recommend is that the two of you, well, first of all, it's usually reciprocal, especially if there's no payment involved. Like, you're going to read their manuscript and give feedback. They're going to read your manuscript and give feedback. So you want to make sure before you exchange the whole manuscript that it's a good fit. So what I usually recommend is saying, hey, let's swap a couple chapters, or let's swap, 25 pages. And then you give them feedback on those chapters, and they give you feedback on your chapters. And then you can see a couple of things. One, you can see, like, do I feel comfortable reading this and giving them feedback on it? Maybe it turns out it has a lot of graphic violence that you're not into, or maybe you realize, oh, this really isn't a genre that I read, and I just wouldn't be able to give them helpful feedback. But, if you feel and if you're like, yeah, I can totally read this and give them feedback, then, move along. And same thing, you can see what feedback they give you. And if you're like, wow, they really, aren't giving the type of feedback that I was hoping for. They're just giving me line edits, and they're not, you could either try to have a dialogue about that and say, oh, I was really hoping for more big picture, about the character and the plot and the pacing, and, am I giving enough description, and what places are you getting confused, and what places are you getting bored? I wasn't really looking for you to just like give me line edits. Or you could just think, maybe there's somebody better out there, and keep looking. So I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to say. And I will just end by saying that I do feel like getting beta readers and critique partners is so important. It can be really hard for us to see our own writing for what it really is. And it can be so hard to kill our darlings when we're all alone with them in our computer, right? So I really think that to grow as a writer, to become a better writer, to have better manuscripts, you can draft the whole thing on your own if that's your jam, but at some point you have to, as scary as it is, show it to other people, and other people who are writers, who read in your genre, who are going to have insightful and constructive things to say, because it is going to help you become a better writer. It's going to help you kind of break down that ego a little bit and go, yeah, that really isn't working, is it? I wanted it to work. I was really trying to make it work. It's just not working. How can I fix it? This is the way that books get better. When I sent off my YA paranormal thriller to my agent, I really thought, and it had been, through beta readers and my writing group, and I really thought it was the best it could be. And then she gave me that 18-page editorial letter, and it got so much better. And I was, I really am blown away with, like, every time I get feedback and make changes, just my manuscripts get better. And that's really exciting. So even though it's scary to get the feedback, it's scary to hear the things that aren't working, it's hard to make the changes, it is also very exciting to feel and see that manuscript getting better and better and better. So I wish you all luck with your writing. I hope you find some awesome beta readers and critique partners and sensitivity readers. I will try to find a way to link to all of the things that I mentioned. And I hope you come by my Substack newsletter and subscribe for free. Like I said, I always have tons of stuff on there for whether you're just starting out writing, or you're querying, or you're, wherever you are in the writing process. So thanks so much for listening, and good luck with your writing journey. Bye.